fuck out of bed, bitch, go.
GM stackers of sats. In this video, we have some very interesting Bitcoin charts to look at and a reminder of where we are in this cycle. If you enjoy this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel and drop me a GM in the comments down below. So the Bitcoin chart here, Bitcoin is currently priced at $30,500. We've got the 1 month chart here on screen. You can see in the previous month, a bullish engulfing candle came off the 55 EMA down there and closed somewhere in the region of where we are now, around $30,500. We also just had the 3 month closure as well. That one putting in a bullish posturing. We've had 2 consecutive quarters of green girthy growth there. And then we're moving into our 3rd quarter here with Bitcoin looking like it wants to push up yet again. But most importantly, we have a 6 month time frame. And typically when you just zoom out and look at the long-term trajectory of Bitcoin over a longer time frame, you get a clearer picture of things and the fact that this is one of the very few up-only markets out there and we are in the right place. Now, bear in mind people's targets. You can see this previous 6 month candle here closed in July of 2021. The bottom side of that is $34,500. Very interesting. A lot of people have this targeted. This is also in alignment with a CME gap. So a gap fill would take us to about 35K as well. And then the top of this candle as well is around 45, 46K. So that is the kind of lines in the sand for bullish continuation, somewhere in the mid 30s, maybe even low 40s. Could be on the cards here. Now this flies in the face of all the macro doom posting out there, but more on that in just a moment. We're going to start off with this news here. The one that dropped on Friday, the kind of misconstrued information around the SEC saying, look, these ETFs are inadequate. But the reason just being because they didn't name the market that the sponsor of the ETF was set to work with. And this under their surveillance sharing agreements. So they want to know what market you're going to operate the ETF with and whether the surveillance sharing agreement will be in place, i.e. they want to know market manipulation is not possible as they'll be tracking all these spot buys and sells within the ETF. Now, funnily enough, one of the companies that SEC has posted a lawsuit to is Coinbase. And as you can see in here, the CBOE has stated Coinbase as the platform of choice. We've had Fidelity, WisdomTree, VanEck, ARK, Galaxy, and BlackRock all file spot Bitcoin ETFs, most of which have now refiled after this inadequate text was leaked. From the above named, most of those are with the CBOE, i.e. with Coinbase. BlackRock is yet to refile, but we know from their previous documentation, they also stated that they would be using Coinbase for their pricing, so it would make sense they're using Coinbase for their surveillance sharing as well. So the markets took a real knock on Friday, a lot of people shaking out, a lot of longs liquidated off the books as well. Pretty timely stuff. Now this was from the Tree of Alpha. CBOE Global Market refiles their Fidelity Spot Bitcoin ETF listing application. And more on this, this is the first time that the SEC engages in discourse saying what needs to be corrected in the filing. So it's very much been our doors are closed to everyone in terms of regulation from the SEC. But as the big boys enter the space, the SEC seem to be like, oh, Larry, Fidelity and others, please ensure you file this point correctly and state the exchanges you're going to be using. So although this was initially a bearish story with headlines just, doing the rounds, Chinese whisper style, well, now it seems that this is quite a bullish thing, in fact, because it's like the SEC saying, look, if you want this passed, you need to fill out this point specifically. So whilst the incumbent exchanges seem to be getting serious pressure, Coinbase, Binance, think of others, maybe Kraken, what we're seeing is a lot of people take their coins off exchanges, which is definitely bullish for the health factors behind Bitcoin. We want less market manipulation. We also want the scarcity of Bitcoin to be greater, and some real key metrics in here are showing that. So this one is from the Rational Root who posted this one. Supply on exchanges just going down only since around mid 2020. You get some peaks and troughs along the way, not a straight road to zero, but as you can see, we currently would be around 12% of all Bitcoin on exchanges, and it looks like we're trending towards this area of maybe 10% in the not too distant future, with more KYC requirements. Think KuCoin in the last week, and people being scared by the regulators going after the likes of Binance it does seem that more and more people are looking after their crypto in their own wallets. A very clever thing to do. Now we go to Bitcoin dominance, and you can see from this breakdown here, or the breakout on Bitcoin dominance, Bitcoin is flying. This is very much a Bitcoin-led rally here due to the fact we've got ETFs coming for Bitcoin. This is obviously very bullish. You've got institutions who are going to be FOMOing in and buying some coins and getting their investment clients to really scoop up more BTC. So as I charted here, Ben Cowan is euphoric above this line around 48.9%. We did break out. I'm sure he is very euphoric right now, as Bitcoin is currently at 51.21%, wicked all the way up to 52.17 just earlier in the week. But let's just zoom out a little bit. Previous all-time high for Bitcoin dominance in the last cycle was around 73 to 74% there. Now, I don't think we'll get that high again, but I think this breakout probably can take us all the way back to the breakdown previously from April of 2021, somewhere around a 60% dominance. Now, the reason why I don't think it can go as high as 71, 72, 73% again, purely is down to the fact there's tons more coins on the market. You've had Optimism launch, Arbitrum launch. Ethereum hasn't broken down in price as much as people wish to think it would. And if ETH holds a significant chunk of Bitcoin dominance, and that's not really breaking down that much, and you've got these other ETH L2s that are attracting a lot of capital and market share, well, Bitcoin is really in an uphill battle against the dominance. So for me, a top around 60% is what I'm really looking for here going into the next cycle. So somewhere maybe mid-2024, and then we can get a breakdown would be ideal. I didn't even know this existed until I started filming earlier, but the Bitcoin dominance perpetual contract on Binance is live, so you can actually bet on whether you think Bitcoin dominance is going up or down. A bit of a no-brainer for a long-term trajectory here going towards maybe the end of the year into the halving. I think Bitcoin dominance will continue to go up. Of course, it's going to and fro in between that time period, but the long-term trajectory seems to be up. As I said, maybe into that 60% territory. Very interesting that you can actually bet on that. It seems you can bet on anything here in crypto land. Now, a quick check-in with the Bitcoin fear and greed. I was a little bit surprised, but then this is based on Bitcoin really only. The fact that we're in a greed situation right now, a reading of 63 today. If we just look at the historic context, looking at the look into Bitcoin chart here, you can see every time we move into maybe 80 or 90%, this precedes a bit of a dump off in price. Green dump, green dump. The only time that it doesn't dump is when we are in a raging bull market and it is up only because everyone is greedy at that point, and it is kind of that greater fool theory as more and more people pile in. Eventually the music stops, but you can get green going on for weeks and weeks, months and months there. But if we do get into some darker shades of green, maybe in confluence with high 30s, maybe low 40s over the next few months for Bitcoin, if price say ticks up into this kind of region and we're in a dark green 18, 90% for greed, it would really make sense to start creaming some off the top, changing the risk profile from being heavy my Bitcoin, ETH and alt portfolio maybe into more stables. As on a 4-year cycle basis, the thing that we have to go back to is 2019. That is pretty much where we are now. 2019 to mimic 2023 makes a bit of sense. And we had this huge rally in 2019 as well before a lot of sideways chop and down. Of course, that is the Rona dump in there, so maybe that's a bit too much of an anomaly, but you can see there were significant pullbacks from 13k all the way down to around 6.5 there. For me, I would suggest somewhere around 24 to 25 is probably as low as we get, just to the fact that is when the BlackRock ETF news was announced. And of course, if we do get an ETF prior to 2024, all bets are off, and I think Bitcoin goes a lot higher from here and probably doesn't give too many pullbacks along the way, as the narrative will just be too strong. Now, here's a really interesting chart. It's the 1-year HODL wave. If you don't know what that is, it means any on-chain Bitcoin wallets that haven't moved their Bitcoin in the last year are recorded here. And generally, we are actually bucking the kind of trend for this one, because typically as this shoots up, Bitcoin comes and finds bottoms. So the golden line, the 1-year HODL wave coming up, more and more wallets holding on to coins for longer durations. Typically that comes in around market bottoms. You can see that here, market bottom again. But what's really interesting with this one recently is the fact that this has broken out in terms of we've never had a HODL wave over the 1-year time frame this high. 69.28% is the current reading. In the previous cycle, we got up to this kind of region around 62, 63%, but you can see this is kind of up only. So in my mind, what this speaks to is the fact that people are unwilling to sell their Bitcoins at this price. There's a lot of long-term SAT stackers, maybe people like me and you at home who are just unwilling to sell it at this price. We can see what is going to come. Institutions want to buy the coins. Why am I going to sell them for 10, 20, 30, 40% gains when I'm expecting big multiples and for Bitcoin to capture a ton more value? A really interesting comparison to the tech company Apple at the end of this vid. Stay tuned for that one. Now here we have the Bitcoin rainbow chart. This is one of the more interesting charts because it actually gives you a kind of color spectrum for when to buy and when to sell. Not financial advice from the rainbow, but indeed it's still in the dark blue at the bottom there, which is by their key a fire sale price for Bitcoin. This takes into the fact price and also sentiment in the market at the same time, using this logarithmic growth curve for BTC. Now it is starting to approach the band just above, which is still a buy by this metric. But what was super interesting around November time when we did kind of bottom out, you can see it actually broke below. So there's actually a clear gap there on the screen, a white below the blue. So we actually fell off the actual curve, and that happened between, no guesses for getting this one right, the Alameda blow up FTX into early January there for Bitcoin. So it has been in a deep value area for quite some time here, and now is showing its first signs of breaking out from this territory. So it still seems it's a very good time to be stacking those Satoshis. ETF on the way, halving on the way, 9 months out, some big catalysts on the horizon. But let's check out whether July is a good month to be buying Bitcoin or whether you want to be selling your backs. So here we have the Bitcoin monthly returns. Let's just zoom into July here. And as you can see, the current return thus far, a couple days in, 0.1%. Now, if we go back 4 years, I think this gives us a good idea of where we are at 2019, because that was the previous 4-year cycle. We lost 6.5%. You go back another 4 years and we get a plus 8.2%. Now, generally just eyeballing this thing, July doesn't look like a bad month at all. It seems fairly neutral, but maybe the average here is like a double-digit gain. Just 3 losing months and about 5 double-digit gainer months, and some that, 8-9% for Bitcoin is neither here nor there. But it does seem from this chart that maybe July is not a bad month to actually be accumulating in, expecting some more upside. It really does look like September is the down-only month. So I don't know if you guys heard the news, but on Friday, Apple closed at a price of $193.97 per share, and it became the first company in history to reach a $3 trillion market cap, which is mind-blowing. Now, Bitcoin's market cap is just over $500 billion. So to get to Apple, the tech company, of course, a very powerful company, but if you think Bitcoin could be the future reserve currency for the globe, it's a 5.15x away. So to equal Apple's market cap, Bitcoin would be trading at 157K. Do you think that is reasonable or not? I'd love to hear from you. What do you think of that? It is a crazy comparison to make, obviously a bit of apples and pears, if you will. Sorry for the dad joke there, but I personally would rather hold Bitcoin than Apple stock. I don't know about you guys, but what do you think of this disparity between the two? I think it speaks to a bigger picture that so much money printing has taken place that we now have companies valued at 3 trillion. And I think it kind of wipes off the argument for a bear market in the equities when you're seeing Apple create some crazy headlines like that. Now, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new as well. Roughly 50% of the people who watch the videos are subscribed and around 50% are not. So if we get that ratio up, I'll be eternally grateful, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Peace.